A pleasure to be speaking with you all again, doing these Zoom meetings. And I'm really excited to be presenting on today's topic, Pallas Athena. And I feel that it's a pretty appropriate time to talk about her with the ongoing transits. And first of all, I need to thank you, Linda, for making this presentation even possible in the first part. I had some Mercury retrograde issues and lost my PowerPoint yesterday, so I was up late typing up notes, and Linda was amazing enough to throw together this PowerPoint presentation. So with my Sun and Mercury in Gemini, Mercury retrograde has a funny way of shutting me down and putting me stopped in my tracks, and so I think that that's going to be a good thing for today's presentation, so that way there's not too much information overload. And we can just sort of talk about this archetype and then see where things take us and potentially open it up to questions. So I'm really excited to talk about Pallas because she is so incredibly powerfully related to the empowerment of the divine feminine and the changing, the transitioning between the matriarchy to the patriarchy and also from the patriarchy to the matriarchy. We'll talk about how she is this bridge in between so many various dimensions. So we can begin by talking about what the asteroids even are and how they affect us in the natal chart. So if you could go to the next slide, Linda, we'll begin by talking about what these asteroids even mean to us. And so particularly these first four asteroids, Ceres, Pallas, Juno, Vesta, they're all discovered within several years of each other. In between the discovery of Uranus and Neptune, and we see Asteroid was discovered the year before Neptune there in 1845. And so really when it comes to these asteroids and they're being discovered, these first 4 or 5 asteroids are sort of in their own little, cluster group. And being discovered at the beginning of the 1800s, it's interesting how this correlates to human history. As we'll be talking about, these first asteroids to be discovered have so much to do with feminine qualities that were in some way or another distorted or suppressed during the thousands of years of patriarchy that we're still coming out of. And so they're relevant in terms of rediscovering and reintegrating these feminine qualities in ourselves. Now, interestingly, around the time of the beginning 1800s, this is the time where there is a global phenomenon where slavery is ending. Haiti declares independence in the United States, and in Britain, slavery is made illegal. So there's an interesting synchronicity where these divine feminine qualities, beginning with Ceres, the principle of motherly nurturance, is being remembered and reintegrated back into our collective humanity at the same time as slavery is outlawed, which is really, the women and the children. It's sort of this slavery being like the most optimal, or I should say, the most intensely patriarchal thing. And so we're starting to see this receding at the time that these asteroids are discovered. There's some interesting correlations between Pallas and Juno too. You can see the sizes there, that these asteroids, the main ones are of significant size. You can see compared to the moon there. Pallas and Juno are roughly around the same size. They were discovered within 2 years of each other, and they were both discovered at 29 degrees of Virgo, which I find interesting because these archetypes are really coming back as these serving humanity and helping us to heal and come back into our natural orientation to nature through the reintegration of the feminine. So anyways, I just wanted to show these dates so that way we can distinguish this first cluster, because as we know, there are now hundreds and thousands of asteroids, and it's a very interesting phenomenon because I don't think that they all equal one another in terms of power and potency. For example, there's no asteroid Timothy, but I found asteroid Timothy Chong. I don't know what it means, but it exists. There's many asteroids like that. There's asteroid Beer, which happens to be conjoined my sun, interestingly enough, even though I don't like beer. And so there's all of these asteroids, and we're starting to get to know them. For those of you who work with Lucifer, some of these asteroids are very powerful. In particular, these 4 main asteroids that were the first 4 to be discovered seem to work in a group. And the book that I'm going to be largely citing from this presentation is Demetra George's Asteroid Goddesses. If you're into asteroids at all, this is a must read. It's one of my favorite astrology books. And so if you could go to the next slide, we'll talk about how Dane Rudhyar and Demetra George refer to the asteroids. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, Dane Rudhyar was one of the main pioneers of astrology, and he was also a groundbreaking musician. He was a pioneer of music as well. And his mastery of both music and astrology is no coincidence. There is a mutual wisdom and understanding that's shared between these things. And so in his description of the asteroids from New Mansions for New Men, Dane Rudhyar talks about the significance of asteroids being like the overtones that goes in between the main gongs of the planets. So the planets, according to Dane Rudhyar, are these main gongs that send out these reverberations that are the fundamental psycho-spiritual functions of reality. When he talks about the asteroids, he's talking about how these are resonators whose hum fills the high regions with overtones of the planetary gongs. This hum never dies. There is never any stretch in the path of the sun, so it's really filling the emptiness. It's this understanding that there is no real space out there. There's information that's being sent in between, etc. And every moment in time is going to be particularly unique when you consider all these hundreds of thousands of asteroids that are filling the spaces at all times. Now, according to Demetra George, she refers to the asteroids as also being links between the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the external planets, the more transpersonal planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, etc. And so there is a similar theme here where, you know, the overtones are going in between and connecting the main gongs, the main pitches and music together. There is a theme that Demetra George talks about in terms of the asteroids, particular asteroids connecting the personal planets to the transpersonal planets. And in the case of Pallas, she connects Mercury, our intelligence, to the higher octave of Mercury, which is Uranus, our own intuition, collective mind, future brilliance, etc. And so the asteroids are octave transitioners, according to Demetra George. And so we can go to the next slide and look at the discovery chart of Pallas. And I find it really beautiful in these Zoom meetings that there's always seems to be some sort of consistent theme that's going between the different meetings. And so we began with Simon talking about Pluto in Libra, and then Daniel talking so much about Uranus throughout the year of 2017. And now we're talking about Pallas Athena, where Uranus and Libra and Aquarius are the going to be the main zodiac signs associated with her. So this is an amazing discovery chart. And for those of you who are familiar with this archetype, I'm going to invite you all, if you would like, to unmute yourself and talk about some of the things going on in this discovery chart. And I almost want to come back to it after we talk about her history. So we'll see how things goes. But just looking at this chart and knowing who this archetype is, it's really amazing, because we see so many characteristics just so clearly defined, such as her Venus sun in Aries. And here is the goddess of war. That sun Venus is opposite to her Uranus in Libra, being a revolutionary, particularly of gender, social roles. Uranus in Libra, she's all about equality and justice in a very objective perspective. And we see that Uranus in Libra is in trine to her moon in Aquarius. So And her own Pallas is at 29 degrees Virgo, conjoined that Uranus. And so all over Pallas's mythology, and then also her qualities, is related to wisdom, the third eye, revolution, an objective type of sight that is very perspective oriented. And this is wisdom that, it's a wisdom you can see. She represents wisdom that is not just read about in books or learned from school. It is a type of, the air almost being full of light and illumination. And so I don't know if any of you guys want to inject with anything that you can see going on in this chart, and maybe we'll come back to it or not, and see where things take us. But there's just so many beautiful things going on in this chart that really reflect how powerful this personality is. So I don't know. We also see Jupiter conjoin Saturn in her chart. There is a theme of social responsibility opposite to her Mars in Aquarius. This is a personality who is very driven in terms of using courage and willpower to be a defender and protector of minorities, the underdog, the outspoken, etc. And so we're going to, if none of you guys have anything else that you'd like to talk about in her chart, maybe we'll move on to her history and then reflect back. So go ahead and go to the next slide since I'm not hearing anybody. But it is one of those charts that just really stands out in terms of truly representing this personality, this Lady Justice, goddess of war with her Venus Sun conjoinment in Aries. So Pallas is a fascinating goddess because of how old she is. She goes back into matriarchal times, and she has so significantly transformed throughout her history, which is going to be relevant to who she is and what she represents in the current transitioning that's going on as well. And so originally she's a matriarchal goddess born off of the shore of Lake Triton. This is in northern Africa. She is a Libyan snake goddess, and that's the sculpture that we see on the right there, the statue holding the snakes. She was originally part of the trifold Libyan goddess Neet, and that is the Egyptian form of Neet on the left. Being a part of the trifold goddess is the moon goddess or the snake goddess, where there are three personalities that really make her up. And so the original goddess that she comes from in matriarchal times, there's the three faces in terms of the Virgin, which Pallas represents, the mother, which is Metis, or sometimes Athena, being separate from Pallas, represents, and then the crone phase is Medusa. And so this is, the new phase moon is the Virgin, the full moon is the mother, and the waning into the next new moon is the crone. Metis is like the primordial feminine goddess coming from the matriarchal times. And so we'll see how her story really gets transformed throughout the patriarchal ages. If you can go to the next slide, we'll start to look into how she's brought into more recent cultures, beginning with the ancient Greeks. And this is really coming from the Iliad and the Odyssey, from Homer's great poetry. This is what very much introduces these early gods and goddesses. And so Pallas Athena is brought in as an immortal. And this is a quote from Plato, who's talking about how Homer interpreted Athena. Athena means mind and intelligence. The word itself is what he's talking about. Divine intelligence. This is she who has the mind of God, she who knows divine things. And so Pallas Athena is, from her very conception, this regarded as this amazing, intelligent light in terms of being the divine intelligence. So you can go to the next slide now. It's interesting how Pallas gets associated to Athena. There are different stories that talk about Pallas, and the word virgin originally did not mean a chaste woman. The word virgin meant a self-autonomous woman who is strong, who is capable, and who is wise, and so able to take care of herself. Are we able to get to that next slide? Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about how, particularly during the Roman era, this archetype is just so severely distorted. And the symbols and the stories in which this distortion happens is so telling. It really reveals how this personality is representing what justice is, and simultaneously what she has experienced throughout her history is going to be a lot of injustice, which is going to really make her who she is in terms of what's important to her and what she's protecting, which is justice, equality, and the divine feminine. And so she was originally born by the sea goddess Metis, and she is transformed into being Zeus's only daughter, born from Zeus's forehead. And this is a very interesting symbol in itself, because originally Zeus maintains his sovereignty by ingesting Metis, so that way the birth is considered his own or whatever. Later, Athena is just born straight from his own forehead. And there is significance, obviously, with Athena coming directly out of the forehead, the third eye of God, Zeus. That's what she represents, is the wisdom of God. And this symbol represents also her beginning to lose her matriarchal origins. She's only being born from the man. Father is the sole owner of her daughter. And yet simultaneously, Demetra George also says that this sociologically depicts the original divine feminine, the sexual primordial essence and energy, making contact with conceptual perspective wisdom. This is the divine feminine becoming conceptually aware of itself through the patriarchy, is a part of what these mass transitionings is a part of, is of course, learning and evolution and growth. And this is happening even despite it not always being fun and games and us going through periods of distortion and losing the truth, etc. So there is that dual meaning of Athena being born from the forehead. There's also the story with her winning a contest with Neptune because she brings in the olive tree, and she represents the olive branch, which is another symbol for peace. And she's very much associated with the zodiac sign Libra. Neptune is so pissed by this that he wreaks havoc, causes floods until they appease him by making women essentially submissive. They lose their citizenship, they lose their right to vote, they lose their right to name their children after their surname. Coming from the same story involving Pallas Athena winning a contest with Neptune. Now, we said that Medusa was a part of the trifold goddess in which Pallas was originally a part of. Medusa is the Scorpio, sexual mystery and rites snake goddess. And Pallas Athena kills Medusa in a patriarchal version of a story, which is, I don't even want to get into it too much, but, Medusa is being raped by Poseidon. And for that reason, she is chased down and put to death. It's a lot of these stories evoke a sense of rage and frustration and how unfair it is, and how Pallas Athena got demoted from her original role and then slays a part of her own nature. She also slays Pallas in some of her stories. Pallas is Athena's sister, and Zeus tricks Pallas into killing her own sister on accident. And Pallas, feeling so ashamed and bad, puts the name Pallas in front of her own name. And then finally, the story of the trial of Orestes is Orestes is accused of matricide, killing his own mother. And in this patriarchal version of the story, Pallas steps in and forgives Orestes of this crime by saying, well, the mother has no right over her children. The father is the sole creator of the child because it's his seed that gets planted, etc. She comes in and becomes the voice of patriarchy. And so we can go to the next slide and talk about how this is all very symbolic to her own nature, and how this is a part of the transitioning. Is she is a very active influence and personality in the movement from the patriarchy back into the matriarchy as well, representing all of these stories in her own makeup. And so the associated signs are Libra, Aquarius, and Leo. Libra, like we said, is the olive branch. also being the bridge between genders. And Pallas Athena in the natal chart has a lot to do with the revolution of prescribed social gender roles. She represents androgyny, which has a lot to do with, Libra and Aquarius. These are the androgynous signs. And she's the bridge, again, between matriarchy, patriarchy, back and forth. As far as Aquarius goes in the natal chart, she is very objective mental brilliance and wisdom. And she has also a lot to do with humanitarianism. Again, the defending of the women, the children, the weak, the downtrodden, the outspoken. She is also the embodiment of uniqueness being associated with Aquarius. Again, it's not, oh, you're a man, you look like this, or you're a woman, you look like this. She, in her own symbology and personality, defies these gender roles. She is the goddess of war. She's got her shield, her spear, and that's the glyph right there, is her spear. So she's powerful. She's courageous. She is the defender of heroes, the protectress of heroes, is a part of that Libra Aquarius nature, as well as Leo. And yet she is compassionate. She is defending, again, the women, the children, the weak. That is a part of her personality. And so there's humanitarianism associated with Pallas Athena, as well as social obligation and duty. Now, Demetra George also correlates her to the sign of Leo because she represents a type of creative intelligence. She's distinguished from being different from the Gemini, Sagittarius, left-right brain type of communication and wisdom. Leo is the spontaneous, life-giving spark. And she represents this in a wisdom perspective type of way. It is creative solutions, seeing things differently than how we've seen them before. It also has to do with solutions and working with human psychology and really the wisdom of creation. She is also associated with being the patroness of the arts. Her associated symbols. Again, the olive branch, spear and shield, serpent, originally being a part of the matriarchal primordial wisdom. And also the owl gets always associated with Athena. And the owl has that type of 360-degree perspective. And so Pallas also is that type of wisdom that is practically seeing. And we'll talk about how, when she's put into different elements and zodiac signs, how that plays out. And so in terms of her symbology, the snake symbol is going to be particularly relevant when Pallas is in a water sign. She has a lot to do with oracular intelligence. A lot of her mythology is with being an oracle. She can give people the power to see in that type of psychic nature, particularly in water signs such as Pisces, where she is right now conjoined with Venus. There is that ethereal, being able to see that Piscean hidden world. In Cancer, it's more that wisdom, that perspective of emotions, etc. When Pallas is in a fire sign, this is going to be more so associated with her spear and her shield, being an initiator by what she sees as needing to be initiated at the time. It's that type of spontaneous wisdom, the third eye again. It is leading, it is defending, it is protecting, the warrior-like nature. When we see her in air element, it's going to be, particularly having to do with that type of communicated intelligence, spoken word, using language, being able to see the most creative and effective way to be able to communicate, use words and languages. And so the symbol there is she's oftentimes holding a book. And when she's holding a book, I like to think of that as if she's holding the book of the Akashic records. What she is as a personality is someone who has read the book of Akashic records so many times. She embodies the Akashic records in her own personality. She understands the natural laws that make up everything. And so she represents this type of unbiased nature. Okay, this is what happened to you, and so this is the age you're in, and this is the patriarchal distortion that happened, etc. It's very interesting the amount of prejudice that's got put onto her as an archetype, and then she simultaneously embodies this type of wisdom that well, that's okay. That's just the time that we're in. We're in a patriarchal time. Oh yeah, Zeus, he was my dad, you know. We did the best that we could at the time. That's the type of wisdom that she represents. Again, so much associated with Libra, where there is that type of unbiased, always keeping the peace type of nature. And one of the things that Pallas can represent in the birth chart is almost a fear of her own success, her own glory. It can be sort of going to the back, being associated with Libra and Aquarius. She's associated with groups. Everybody else needs to be taken care of and protected and make sure there's harmony and equality in the group at her own potential self-sacrifice. And Pallas Athena can also have to do with father complexes, being really moved by the desires, the obligations of authorities or the parents. And again, seeing the authority or the parent in that type of unbiased, unjudging way. These are all themes that can have to do with Pallas Athena. And there we also see such a great inventor she was in the Greek-Roman time, bringing inventions such as the chariot, ship, the plow, and the trumpet. She is a huge archetype in terms of our history, in terms of how long she's been involved in our history since matriarchal origins, and how big of a presence she's been in our own past in terms of the Greek and the Roman time, how long she was worshipped and honored. So in the birth chart, she is the transformer between Mercury and Uranus, okay? And so we see that she can link the left brain, spoken rational intelligence with the right brain, creative intuition, and it can go back and forth. She can bring that intuition into words and writing, and she can use words and writing and reflect back on those things in a type of intuitive right brain way. Okay, there's the connection of the book to Uranus, the Akashic records. Pattern recognition is another thing that's really huge with Pallas Athena. It's that being able to see parts as being a part of the whole, that Aquarian nature. Perspective, perceptual wisdom. She will oftentimes be a powerful influence in graphic designers or artists. Bridge between the personal and the transpersonal. Humanitarianism. And being able to communicate and objectively reason humanitarian ideals in a very elegant way is that Pallas Athena wisdom. There's two powerful women personalities that I thought to check their charts, where she has a very powerful Pallas position. Joan of Arc is one of them. When we think of these stereotypical defying women and their powerful blending in a type of androgynous way, as Joan of Arc, was a knight and wore suits of armor and was very defying of the social prescriptions of that time and age, and she was such a powerful leader. She had Pallas Athena in Aquarius conjoin Uranus, in trine to her moon conjoin Jupiter in Libra. So I forgot to include the charts here, but we see Pallas Athena in Uranus with Aquarius is very powerful. And then I looked at the chart of Maya Angelou, a more recent, speaker of justice, human rights, equality, powerful woman, etc. She also has Pallas Athena in Aquarius trine to her moon in Libra. And that's amazing. We're just looking at two random, powerful women speaking for humanitarian social rights, and they both have Pallas Athena in Aquarius trine to their moon in Libra. So we see these zodiac signs, Aquarius and Libra. And so whenever we're dealing with the signs of Libra, and we see lots of a signature in Libra, the 7th house or Aquarius, it can involve the Pallas Athena story and themes and personalities, even if the asteroid is not directly involved. And I think that in many respects, the asteroids help us to give a name and a face to some of these zodiac signs that we see, to be able to better understand these themes in that type of, tangible, personal way. And so we can go to the next slide and see where things take us from there. And so these are just sort of the underlying themes, again, of how she shows up in the birth chart. Issues surrounding social justice, equality, social duty balancing. I correlate her with the Lady Justice archetype. I think the Lady Justice archetype, the Justice card from the tarot, it's the same personality. It's just sort of, you know, being born out of this earlier version of itself. And so the defender of minorities, maintainer of balance and harmony, having much to do with gender equality, balancing and redefining of masculine feminine roles. And so where we see people with Pallas Athena signatures, Libra, 7th house, Aquarius, again, this has a lot to do with that theme of androgyny, which is us essentially moving from the dark ages into the future, where in the dark ages, oh, if you are a man and you wear this clothing, or you're a woman and you do this, you're going to get your finger chopped off. And we're moving into an age that really honors and celebrates the total uniqueness in every single person, irrelevant of gender, etc. And so she can have to do with transvestism, cross-dressing, you know, lesbian, gay rights. Again, everything has to do with the total balance and equality in a type of unbiased, I'm not going to judge you for the surface type of theme here. She's the protectress of heroes, overseer of justice, very powerful, sort of like a Rosie the Riveter type of personality is what we're talking about here, being a very powerful, masculine, and at the same time, compassionate woman. And we can see these themes, you know, in powerful women that might be being very Aries, being very Capricorn, leading, you know, directing, being powerful leaders can have the Pallas Athena signature, and also men who are leaning in the opposite direction, are integrating their sensitivity, their own creativity, their sensuality, can also have Pallas Athena, Libra, 7th house themes. Being a ruler of Aquarius, she can have a lot to do with advanced technology. Again, having to, you know, really see how patterns and systems work. That type of, you know, Gemini or Pallas in Gemini or Pallas in Aquarius can be the inventor of new technology by seeing how these electrical systems and so on have to do. She can have to do with alternative healing as well in certain respects. Newer forms of psychology, healing involving music or that type of sound, you know, colors, particularly when Pallas is in Pisces or something like that, or in Leo. She can also signify healing. She's associated to Hygeia, who is another name associated with Pallas. And she's also very much prolific in the charts of great visual artists, photographers, mental healers, etc. My partner, Mackenzie, actually has Pallas Athena on her midhaven in Aquarius, and she is a professional photographer. And then she can also have to do with father complexes. Again, that can have to do with mental creative blockages having to do with the father or the authority, particularly when we see Pallas in a hard aspect, you know, to Saturn or Jupiter or Uranus. There can be this sort of mental, conceptual, or creative blockages, and that can come out of fears of not being perfect enough or needing to do it perfect for the father or the authority, or toning down their own brilliance out of compassion for the other. Again, there can be some of those themes, almost like, oh, what's the word? I can't think of it now, but it's, you know, when you are imprisoned by your captors and you see your captor as being a hero. She can have to do with those themes in her relationship to her father, Zeus. And so it looks like we got 5 minutes left, and I'd be more than happy to hear any questions that anybody has on Pallas, whether it be Pallas in their own chart or anything like that. And we can also look back at her her discovery chart too to see these themes again. So I don't know, hello, is there anybody out there who'd like to share something?
Yeah, hi.
Well, I will, Timothy. It's Sue.
Go ahead, Sue, yeah.
Okay. Hi, Sue.
I love, hi, I love all of this. I have Pallas in Scorpio conjunct my Mars. And all of it makes so much sense what you're saying that I mean, each one of them, I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for sharing your chart too. Pallas in Scorpio can be really brilliant, almost like Jupiter in Scorpio in terms of seeing beneath the surface and more than what meets the eye, and then being connected to Mars can be, inspired and using and driven by that passion and that deeper wisdom. That's a really beautiful aspect.
Awesome, thank you. Yes.
Timothy, it's Linda here. Hi. Yes, my Pallas is at 5 degrees Pisces, which sits conjunct the Pluto in this chart. And I find that quite interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and in this
a little bit
chart,
of a connection there, maybe.
Pallas is at 29 degrees Virgo, and I feel that she encompasses all the gifts of Virgo. She is the best of what Virgo can offer. And I also noticed in one of the diagrams, she had a cat sitting on her head. Do you know anything about that?
It's a sphinx, I think. And I don't know too much about it, but it's going back to some of her matriarchal Egyptian origins. Some of those things did carry through and survive in her archetype.
And just one more question. Is that a statue of Pallas behind you there on the shelf?
Yes, it is. She's been my guest this evening.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I just wanted to quickly say, and then I think Tashi has a question too. We have this Uranus-Jupiter opposition going on this next year. This makes this archetype very relevant. The other thing that's going on this year is Venus retrograde is going to be beginning in March, going through Aries. And this is very relevant to feminism. And that's why I kind of wanted to present this, as this can be one of the themes of this year. She's going to move retrograde and conjoin Pallas at the Aries point, 0 degrees Aries at the start of April. And then Pallas again later in April. She is stationing retrograde at the beginning of March, conjoined Venus in her own discovery chart. Around 13 degrees is when she's going to turn retrograde. So there's some interesting Pallas stuff. Tashi, do you have a quick question we can fit in these last several seconds?
I just noticed that Pallas in the USA chart is 29 or 28 Aquarius. It's returning right now, and it's in that quincunx. And so all the struggles of what we're going to have to fight for women's rights with Trump.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's definitely a theme. And the Statue of Liberty is the American Pallas too.
Yeah. I was teaching about Pallas earlier this morning to one of my clients who has a transit of it, and I was surprised to know that when she's depicted with snakes, that's the serpent or the Kundalini energy she's connected to. And when it's above her head, then it's the wisdom. When it's below, it's Kundalini. I thought that was from Demetra George. You're right. That book is God about the
Demetra George, amazing. Yeah. Highly recommend that book.
Thanks. This was a great lecture. Really good lecture. Thank you. I learned a lot. I love the asteroids.
Thank you, amazing, beautiful, powerful women. Appreciate you all.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. That was absolutely fantastic. We have about half a minute left, and do we have any other guys here? You're the only one with us, so you're amazing too.
It's an honor to be a part of this group, so thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Want to say thanks to Timothy, and we'll move on to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you, Linda.